Spreaker, you can do that. And I also just missed an inbox message somebody sent me. Oh, well, such is life.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's even more fun when I unmute you, Mike. Sorry. Go on.
No, I don't want to talk now. I don't want to talk now. You do this.
Well, it's hard because when your nose is on my side of the room, I just assume you're using my mic.
Listen, we're practically like a yin and yang. My nose is on your side of the room going over the top of your belly, which is intruding into my space. So we're like that yin and yang figure where we just kind of overlap with certain things, okay?
Yeah, that's what it is.
I'm good and you're evil.
So, since we last spoke live, obviously we had the tragedy in France.
It wasn't a tragedy, it was a freaking terrorist attack.
It was a terrorist attack.
It was a tragic event, absolutely, but...
It's a tragedy to France.
Look, it is. France is kicking ass right now.
Right, and it's one of those things, too...
Yes.
Somebody said to me, well, they kind of got what they deserved.
What?
In the sense of... They've been allowing the influx and the Muslim extremism and all that other stuff to kind of flourish. With
Yeah. But nobody. I don't care. I don't care how fucked up your policies are. Excuse my French. Pardon me. See what I did there? But that angers me. I don't care how screwed up your policies are. Nobody deserves that. Right. That's like saying that we would deserve it because Obama's policies were so screwed up that has allowed the Middle East to basically fall into an abyss.
Well, it's like blaming the domestic violence victim, right? She knows he's like that, and she should have left a long time ago. It doesn't change the fact that she owns no fault in it.
Right.
But, the one good, if there is any that can come out of it, that I see so far, is the overwhelming response from France. And really probably change a country's opinion, especially the Parisians, who have a tendency to be very liberal and socialized, if you will. I think it really changed their opinion into the reality of the situation. I think you now see a country, and certainly a city, who is going to be more on edge and more guarded. And you see them, France was already sending their aircraft carrier to Syria. That was happening before the attack. But I don't know if their role was going to be as engaged.
They're partnered with Russia now. Okay, so we have a NATO ally, right? Partnered with Russia, and we'll get more into that here in a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but look, here's the thing about France. They have very, 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 very strict gun laws.
Yep.
So I have no idea how this happened.
Yep.
And I'm not blaming France. The jihadists, the Muslim extremists, jihadists are the ones that did this, and they're the ones that are held accountable. But this is not the first time in history that this happened. We had the Mumbai attack in 2008 in India, where there were 10 terrorists involved. It began as an active shooter attack along, I think, 4 different routes of travel or whatever, where they ended up, a 3-day siege ended up developing at a few different locations, and 9 of the 10 terrorists were killed, with one taken as hostage. So this isn't the first style attack of this manner.
Right. Not at all.
And so we had... And look, here in the United States, there was an active shooter terror-related attack at the cartoon event in Texas.
Yep.
That was stopped by law enforcement after that individual or those guys opened fire. So we know these types of attacks happen. And the Charlie Hebdo in France as well, right, where you had those active shooter attacks, those individuals utilizing small unit tactics to move and to gain certain positions and to respond to law enforcement coming in. So Paris was a horrible tragedy. You had 166 people killed, I think, in Mumbai, and there was 120 something they're saying in the Paris attack. Various locations again. You had the stadium. You had some restaurants. You had the theater. Mm-hmm. I think there were 3 and 2. So I think there were 8 attackers, 3 cells.
3 separate
three at the stadium, 3 at the theater, and then 2 at the restaurants. So we have 3 small unit teams, again coordinated. There's if you watch the video of the shooters at the theater, they're in elevated positions. Clearly, there's an element of training involved, just based upon how they were moving. You have the restaurant shooters, where again, it appears there's some element of training, some element of experience there. These events were timed to go off at about the same time. So this was obviously an organized plot, and again, not the first time this happened. This guy that they killed, the mastermind of this plan, this was not original.
Right.
They just selected the target locations, and these active shooter initiated, active terrorist attacks that begin as these active shooter type events. Look, these can happen anywhere. These can happen here in the United States, and so of course our thoughts and prayers are with the people of France. The victims that are still alive and their families and so forth. But look, we have to be prepared here in the United States, and this is kind of what I want to talk about. There was something else that came out this week, and I haven't seen a lot of play in the media, but given the optics of what's happening in the world, this is pretty important. You remember when the riots were going on because of the law enforcement, and they had that show of force in Ferguson, right?
Yes.
And you had law enforcement there with armored vehicles. Again, armor is defensive by nature. There are no offensive weapons mounted on any of these law enforcement vehicles. But a lot of these vehicles are used by tactical teams and law enforcement because they are part of the 1033 program, where I think it was 97 when the law was passed, basically allowing law enforcement agencies and state level governments to get military surplus vehicles and equipment for certain things. And these vehicles, a lot of the vehicles that they get surplus, look, these vehicles cost a lot of money. If you buy a Bearcat or an Oshkosh or something from the civilian market, and you need defensive armor for a tactical team or for an ambulance to get victims out under fire, which, guess what, folks, that's happened.
Yeah.
You get these vehicles for free under the 1033 program from the federal government that are surplus. They're no longer needed, or they order too many, whatever the case is. And after the Ferguson, when one of these vehicles appeared in the riots behind, Obama administration, after they pissed themselves, signed this executive order saying no more. And this week it came out, and the executive order is 13688. It was signed in January after the 2014 riots in Ferguson, so it was signed January of this year. The 1033 program was set up in 97, like I said before. And here's the thing. With all of this going on in the world, the story came out this week that the federal government is taking these vehicles away from the agencies that have them.
Yes. Removing them.
Yes.
It's not even like asking them to return.
No. We are pulling that out. So back in May, Obama said, quote, "We've seen how militarized gear can sometimes give people a feeling like there's an occupying force, as opposed to a force that's part of the community that's protecting them and serving them. It can alienate and intimidate local residents and send the wrong message. So we're going to prohibit some equipment made for the battlefield that is not appropriate for local police departments." So, keep in mind with everything that's going on in the world, and terror attacks have happened here in the United States.
Yes.
We just talked about the one in Texas. What about the one down the street from us here at UC Merced, where it seems like there's potentially a terror component to the edged weapon attack on campus? we can go to Fort Hood #1.
Yep.
We can go to the Oklahoma beheading.
Yep.
We can go to. There are instances here in the United States. So if we don't think it can happen here, guess what?
Oh,
It could. Chances are, will it? Hopefully not. But
Right.
could it? Absolutely. Does that mean because it might not, good chance it won't happen that we're not prepared for it? Of course it doesn't mean that, because I'm not paranoid if I'm right one time, right?
Right.
So now you have the federal government taking these vehicles. First of all, not the federal government's job to dictate how a local law enforcement agency is perceived by its local population. Guess what? Those residents may want their police to have that equipment.
Right. And that's
And that's a local issue.
Right. And if they don't,
Or a state issue.
then the citizens in that community can change that.
And we've seen that done in Davis, California.
Yes.
Now, oddly enough, a few weeks after they sent their armored
They
vehicle
were
back, they needed it.
Begging for one
Yes.
and had to wait an hour for it.
Yeah, but they can do it. So, I want to kind of put this all together now. So much attention is paid to these terror attacks that are happening in France and so forth, and the big terror alert that came down. But then not really, because everybody should travel and everything will be fine. And we can get to that in a little bit if there's time. But now we have these vehicles being pulled, and law enforcement agencies are not happy
At all.
And here is the big part. First of all, we've already talked about armor being defensive in nature, and we've beaten that to death. SWAT teams answer to their local agencies, to their local elected officials, at whatever level those teams are. These aren't federal teams. These are state teams. These are county teams. These are city teams that are answerable to those elected officials at those levels that understand the needs of their community. Who is going to respond to downtown New York, Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Francisco, any town, USA, when a small lone wolf cell of violent extremists begin an attack that went unnoticed because they were so cut off from social media, from everything else, from any kind of centralized control, and they utilize small unit tactics to overwhelm the resources of law enforcement. Because guess what, folks? The military is not going to be there to stop that attack.
Nor should they be.
The National Guard is not going to be there to stop that attack.
Nor should they be.
The people that are there to stop that attack are going to be the men and women of the American civilian law enforcement groups.
Well, and you look at...
That's going to be who stops it. Now, there's this huge discussion about demilitarized law enforcement. And now this week, in light of the terrorist events that are happening globally, the federal government is removing a major tool to some agencies and their ability to respond effectively to this threat.
A tool removing a tool.
Our law enforcement is already behind the eight ball on this.
Way behind.
There are talks in certain communities of removing rifles from patrol cars because they're military assault rifles and they look mean. Guess what? A pistol is a defensive-only weapon.
It's not for attacking.
You need a rifle when this bad thing goes down. And all you have to look at the apprehension phase of the Boston Marathon bombers.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
There's an event right here at home, and that was a bombing suspects. Imagine if that was a coordinated terror strike, utilizing the principles of small unit.
You talk about the marathon bombers in Watertown. One of the first things they were calling for on scene, because Boston and a lot of the areas around that, and I know firsthand, do not carry long guns in every patrol car.
Right.
If you listen to those tapes, and you get them on YouTube, one of the first things you hear one of the cops calling for the gold cars. The gold cars have the long guns in it. It's essentially a two-man car that they're SWAT trained, but they have rifles for other officers in it.
And California learned that lesson with the West Hollywood shootout.
Yes.
North Hollywood shootout, whatever the hell it was.
Northwest Hollywood shootout.
Yes.
They moved a little
They
west.
Moved a little
they started
bit,
north and then
they moved.
No, you're good.
So, But California learned the lesson.
Don't search the West Hollywood shootout on Google.
But that's when California changed, right? That's when the rifles went into all the patrol cars in certain agencies, and law enforcement was having to go to gun stores in order to get enough firepower to fight back.
Begging for more power. I mean, obviously.
They couldn't stop these guys. So we've learned our lesson once, and those were bank robbers. It literally was a scene out of Heat, the movie Heat. This is why not only is the 1033 program is important and why this administration is a complete full of buffoons for not realizing this. And how does nobody see the irony in suspending that program in the wake of everything that's happening and then talking about law enforcement preparedness and everything else? Well, this is kind of the big key point that I wanted to talk about here is how do obviously the answer is we don't expect our law enforcement to respond. Here's another problem. How many civilian law enforcement officers are trained in countering small unit tactics or are trained in small unit tactics themselves?
It just got magical in here. Go on.
How many firefights do you see from dash cam videos and so forth where they're engaged in basically a linear firefight with nobody being called in or maybe to do a flanking movement or to do something?
Well, and it's funny because
like that.
In this country, after the Columbine shootings, law enforcement overwhelmingly throughout the country began engaging in training on how to respond as a small unit.
They had to.
Because Columbine was a mess.
Right.
Because you had 4 different trains of thoughts, multi-agency, nobody was on the same page.
It was the standard at the time, which is contain and contact a tactical team.
Right, it just
call SWAT, set up a perimeter, wait for SWAT to go in and deal with the problem.
Which is exactly what happened at Bataclan in France, believe it or not. They were waiting for a tactical team to go in after the shooters. That's why there was a 45-minute delay to an hour. So after that, they were using everything they could to access small unit tactics. But I can tell you from the guys that I knew back east, they weren't training with rifles even then. They were training with pistols. And as you pointed out earlier, a pistol is merely a defensive weapon. Mm-hmm. So to turn around and try to make an offensive engagement to an active terrorist with a defensive weapon
at long ranges, who have the advantage with rifle, and as we saw in France, many of them are going to have battle training that they got in Syria and either engaged in fighting or engaged in a hell of a lot of training. Right.
And under the influence of narcotics, because most of them are high on stimulants before they commit these terrorist attacks.
Look, so you have the active shooter tactics you're talking about. Law enforcement is actually able to go in and they're utilizing those type of tactics in an indoor setting for the most part. That's different than responding to an active terror threat where you have a couple 2-man fire teams in different locations loose on the streets.
Right.
It's different maneuvering a couple folks around some hallways versus exactly, and that's my point. Versus, hey, you know what? We have folks here. Hey, I need you to come from whatever other direction and work that out. So law enforcement training is an issue here too. And I understand, well, it sounds like you're having law enforcement go to war. Well, guess what? It's not like the cops are going to pull you over for speeding and all of a sudden they're going to start doing this stuff.
They're not going to flank. Well, there are some agencies in this country that do that now. They flank you to issue the citation.
Right. They flank you all every chance they get.
I flunked flank. How do you flunk flank?
Great movie. So I think what we need to be having in this national conversation that's not happening right now is training the street cops, American law enforcement, who are going to be the first responders. Guess what, folks? It ain't going to be the FBI guys.
Yeah, no, it ain't going to be any of those teams. And here, listen.
They may investigate after the fact because that's their thing.
Right, they sit there and take pictures.
Right.
But reality is the threat now has never been like this stateside. We've never had this threat of small unit tactics. It's just never been there. So when everyone turns around and says, well, law enforcement shouldn't be like that, well, the threat has changed here.
Yeah, I think the threat changed with Mumbai, but still it was over there.
But as we saw, right, it was far away. 9/11 we were hit with planes, so there's really no way to defend that as cops. But as we saw with Texas, as you see with France, and listen, they're making no bones about it. They want to come here, and if we can't stop drugs from coming over the southern border, what makes you think that we can stop these terrorists? And there was a group of Syrians that were arrested, I think, in El Salvador that were trying to come north early last week. And the weapons and the explosives. The cartels will absolutely sell all of that to them over the southern border.
How hard is it to make an explosive?
But I mean,
really,
they get Mexican military-grade explosives through the cartels coming over the border.
But that's not even anything they need.
Right.
I mean, look, their Inspire magazine, I'm sure, puts stuff out.
No, but what I'm saying is
you can go on the internet, I'm sure, and seek stuff out.
What I'm saying is it's a quick trip through Mexico, and it's not even like they have to get here and try to come up with all that, start researching and buy stuff. They could probably buy it in Mexico fairly easily on the way here. So the fight has changed for cops. Yeah, they have to worry about the things that they would do now every single day. But the simple fact is...
And worry about getting people complain on them.
Right. And one of the things that we saw in the France attack, they timed it to draw resources back and forth and spread them as thin as possible.
Yeah.
They knew the president was going to be at that stadium, and they did a very light attack up there, and they did it 10 minutes before everything else to draw as much resources as they can. And then what happens is, when they go to downtown Paris and they start shooting and everything, you have pandemonium throughout the streets. People that run in, driving, trying to get out of the city. That now delays law enforcement from responding. Charlie Hebdo attacks. You saw an unprepared police department arriving to deal with that, right? You had the first cop on a bike show up to the shooting without a gun. Because they have unarmed law enforcement in some sections.
Because guns are bad.
You had another cop who walked up with a pistol with about a second and a half, was down.
With a two-man team.
With a two-man team, right. That was just a two-man combat fire team. They used cover, concealment, they moved together. They
had one staying near the car for the egress.
I mean, they were ready to go. So that threat is on its way here, and we have
It's here!
Well, you know what I mean. You're right, it's here. But we have to get to the point where we have to stop worrying about what looks scary in this country and start dealing with what's actually friggin' scary.
Yes.
And it's not going to be, like New York City just graduated a whole bunch of people to their special units team. I think it was another 75 people. And and this is New York City. De Blasio is the mayor.
Right.
And they're saying they're adding another 150 because they got to bring their numbers up. Here's a little hint. They're probably not going to... by the way, New York City is where that guy, the Pakistani guy a couple years ago, failed to launch the propane bomb. But they probably won't do a two-man fire team in downtown Times Square. Why? Because there are cops everywhere. It's going to be at a shopping center in the Midwest. It's going to be at a kid's soccer game or a high school football game. It's going to be somewhere that we don't...
Or another major sporting event.
Or another major sporting event.
Look, here, and I want to be very clear. I am not advocating law enforcement running around in full tactical gear and making traffic stops in armored vehicles. And
as funny as that would be,
as hilarious as that would be, and everybody is at gunpoint. I am not advocating that at all. The only thing that I am saying is our federal government is idiotic for stripping American law enforcement with the resources that are available to them right now that enhance their ability to respond to that threat. And our officers should be trained and equipped
to deal with
and have the tools to deal with that threat in order to employ that when the time is right.
Now, I know we only have 3 minutes, but Dan brought this up earlier in the chat room, and I agree. Dan Butcher, Pundit Press. Is this another step towards federalizing law enforcement? Because you're now taking necessary tools from locals, and if they turn around and say, well, locals can't handle it, so maybe we need to start having the federal presence be greater. We talk about them disarming local cops like you saw in France. And almost like Mexico, where the federales are the ones who really respond for all the bigger things.
Look, it could. I mean, how many agencies are already dependent upon federal grants and federal funding for certain things? You look at the TSA. Why does the TSA have Viper teams on trains, and why do they say their jurisdiction is all things transportation? Okay, so you're going to monitor my Nikes? Does that mean that a federal highway, like Interstate 5, because it is federal in nature, that now the TSA could go up and they can start making federal traffic laws to go start enforcing things? There's already a uniformed federal police division. So,
yes.
So could it happen? Yeah, of course it could. Of course it could, particularly as budgets are impacted at the state and local levels, and states, oh yeah, you want to give us more money and you want to come in and take this and we can save this money? Yeah, absolutely. You can patrol the federal highways. They were originally made to move military equipment anyways from one end of the country to the other. So go ahead, yeah, federal. You should patrol it.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you?
We're up against a break. Now I'm angry. I feel like playing Griswold.
Hallelujah!
Holy shit! Where's the eggnog? Or Tylenol.
Oh,
how did I miss that? I need another shot.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, 100 Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cow for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Hey, it's Jersey Joe from Reaver of Common Sense, and we have moved to a new night and time. Every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on shrmedia.com, you will catch the Reaver of Common Sense uncensored, unfiltered, and only on shrmedia.com.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
We're talking back and forth about the last segment a little bit, and Kel Fritzy, who's got an awesome show that you can hear right here on SHR Media, brought up in the chat room. Do you think they'll plan anything, meaning the Muslims extremists on Black Friday? Do you think it'll be a target?
Well, I don't know about at Target. I mean, they have a lot of sales and stuff there, so it can tend to draw a lot of people. Now, it might be at Walmart, or, I mean, there's a lot of different stores it could be at. Why Target specifically? Is he a Walmart operative that wants to draw people away from Target?
Well, I mean, really, just go on.
No, I'm like, what? I don't understand what you want me to say right now. Why ask about that store specifically?
Only on this show can terrorism be funny. But it's not, but it is. Oh, man. So moving right along.
Do you remember? Okay, here's what I want to see happen. It will never happen, but here's what I want to see. Do you remember the old Looney Tune and the old World War II Looney Tunes and the old World War II Disney cartoons that depict like the Japanese and the Germans?
Oh, yes.
Most of them are banned. Good luck finding them. You can find some on YouTube. But I want those to come out now for like the jihadis. Like Bugs Bunny fighting the jihadis.
Well, they had it, right? Do you remember Yosemite Sam with Bugs Bunny? When he was somewhere in the Middle East, he was wearing a turban and riding a camel.
Oh, yeah. No, and wait, do you remember the Ray Stevens song, Ahab the Arab?
Yes.
But I want, like, the Looney Tunes, because we're at war again, right? I want wartime propaganda cartoons showing that. How much hate mail is that going to generate? You can send all hate mail to Sacco.
At shrmedia.com, because it still works. Oh, man.
He doesn't, but his email does.
Agador had a great follow-up why it would be at Target, because they do discourage gun owners from carrying inside.
Ooh.
So, you know.
That never stops me.
So let's move onward and upward, if you will.
So onward and upward. So we have the Russians. They're flying strikes in Syria.
Yes.
Along with, and France is involved with them as well, theoretically to fight ISIS. And I'm going to let you talk about this segment, because you actually talked about it before and called it.
Yeah, I did actually. Doesn't happen often. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about the Turks on air patrol being lit up via radar.
It was like a month and a half
planes.
ago, 2 months ago, something like that.
And they held tone on the Turkish aircraft for about 4 minutes, and it was a Russian. I think it was a Su-34 Sukhoi.
And it was like Goose. He's just screwing with them. He's just trying to piss us off. He's fired by now.
And so they were warned after the fact. Turkey made it very obvious that any more.
Did you just almost call it Turkmenistan?
Turkmenistan. The Ottoman Empire made it very, very, very clear and obvious that, hey, you do this again, it's going to cost you. The Turks don't screw around. As a matter of fact, the fall of the Ottoman Empire might have something to do with that. And they have the equipment.
What's Italy's excuse? Sorry, go on.
Moving on. We saw that with the Syrians last year, where they blew a Syrian plane out of the sky that crossed over. Really, it's definitely something to be concerned about. And I said, and everyone said I was crazy for saying this, but I said,
I didn't.
Next time this happens, you're going to see the Turks knock one of their planes out of the sky, and it's going to escalate this situation ridiculously.
Yep.
Absolutely ridiculously.
I remember when you said that.
Flash forward to 48 hours ago, or just a little over that, and you have a Turkish F-16.
Two of them, right?
Two of them. Fire on a
Su-24.
Su-24 bomber.
It's practically the B-1. Or the F-111.
Yeah.
It's practically the F-111.
Well, yeah.
They designed it after that we had our F-111. But I digress.
That's neither here nor there. They just had to steal our technology again. Allegedly crossed into Turkish airspace, in which they were shot down. They were engaged and shot down. One of the pilots,
the pilot,
right, was
captured and killed.
Right, the Rio landed safely, was turned over to Syrians, who turned him over to the Russians. The pilot was captured and killed, and allegedly, there's stories out there that as a Russian Mi-24 helicopter was going to retrieve them, it was shot down by rebels on the attempt, or shot at. So it's definitely a scary situation that's about to get worse.
And the Russian aircraft, I believe, crashed on the Syrian side of the border.
A couple miles in.
Right.
Yeah, that's, a couple miles when you're at 30,000 feet going 500 miles an hour is nothing.
No, it's not. And I'm not saying that it is, but I'm just saying the wreckage did end up on the Syrian side of the border.
Right.
Now you have Russia. They're moving a missile defense system into place, which is going to be deployed along the border there at their air base.
Immediately.
To defend and this is a state-of-the-art system. Like, this is...
Yeah.
No,
the 400 system is no screwing around. It's a SAM system. I think it's good up to 72,000 feet. It was ripped off the original design that was for the U-2 spy plane. Enhanced radar, 3-part system.
Mm-hmm. It's got... They moved one of their missile cruisers closer in, so that they could also cover their aircraft engaged in operations there.
Yep. And you also, no more bombers will be allowed to fly without a fighter.
They're going to have a fighter escort now.
Yep. So,
it's ramping up for sure.
Yeah. And we talked.
And here's the thing: we have a NATO country allied with Russia right now.
Yes.
France is allied with Russia in this
fight against ISIS. Yep.
Look,
this whole...
Look, here's the thing. We have the makings, and you and I talked about this at dinner. We have the makings for World War III right here.
Right.
World wars start with one incident.
Archduke Ferdinand.
And we certainly have this here. And we also went on to talk about Assad at dinner. And, I understand they're an evil regime, and we don't want to support Assad, and I get all that. What's the bigger threat right now? Bashar Assad is not going anywhere. We know where he is. If Assad is removed from power, we've created another power vacuum there.
Huge.
Again. And we've seen how well that's worked out for us so far in the Middle East. I'm not saying he's a good guy.
Right.
But he's not going anywhere.
At all.
Why are we not focusing on ISIS, which is the bigger threat?
Right.
Look, I may get some hate mail and some pushback right now in the chat room on this. Why are we not partnering with Russia and France and supporting the efforts against ISIS?
Right.
Not against the rebels. We're not going to strike the rebels. That's fine. I have no issue with that. The Russians are going to do their thing. But if we sit down and we partner with them in the fight against ISIS, including boots on the ground, including whatever. And look, if these rebels are fighting with ISIS, fuck them.
I agree.
What's the bigger global threat? Is it Assad or is it ISIS? And right now it's ISIS. And we need to focus on one thing here. And if we focus on ISIS, like I said, Assad's not going anywhere.
Right. It's not
that's something that can be dealt with.
That ship has sailed.
Yes.
That ship has sailed long ago.
Obama had his opportunity.
Absolutely had his opportunity. When the chemical weapons were used, Obama had the opportunity to completely decimate the Syrian military and the Syrian government.
And be in the right to do so.
Right. And he chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it before, he created this situation. But here we are, and now you have to deal with the problem at hand. The problem at hand is ISIS is the much bigger threat, and the town, the head of they call it a caliphate, I call it assholeville, Raqqa needs to be rocket off the friggin' planet, and it needs to be 24/7, 365, just bombs, and we need to do it in a rotation. We needed to do and we talked about this months ago.
Yeah.
In collaboration with the Russians. Listen, I'm no fan of Putin.
No.
I am no fan of Assad.
No.
But, like you said, the biggest threat in the world right now is ISIS. I mean, estimates of hundreds of thousands of fighters.
And I don't care if they're hiding amongst civilian population.
Right.
Look, we have to hit them. And eventually the civilians are going to get sick of having them hide among them.
Well, collateral damage is part of war. It's an unfortunate
I'm not
part.
saying we target civilians.
At all.
But if there's collateral damage, it's sad. But eventually, the civilians are not going to want ISIS among them. And it's going to turn against them. And even if ISIS is brutal to the populations that don't want them there, that's going to turn opinion against them even more.
Right. They're the ones causing it. And now you have that influx of people who may be willing to stand up inside. So you start having different approaches to this. The other thing that it could do is this arms race, new Cold War that we're into could be put on hold. And that's a big issue that I have right now. I'm not afraid of Russia in that regard. However, I always fear Putin a little bit. As crazy as he is, you never know. But it needs to be kind of a bridge and a gap, right? Hey, you know what? We can work together on this and see where it goes. If we don't start talking to Russia and we don't start talking to Turkey and say to Turkey, hey, back off a little bit. And I agree. Listen, I know we disagree as to whether or not they should or should not have from a political point of view.
Yeah, look, and to give some insight into what you're talking about with that, at dinner I made the comment, I said, look, Turkey absolutely has a right to defend its airspace. No question, they have a right to defend their airspace. But could their response have been different? Could they have their F-16s shadow? If nothing was locked up, if that Su-24 was not locking anything up, and it was flying in their airspace and it was en route to another target location, they could have shadowed them out of their airspace. If something was locked up, hey, I get it. You got to shoot them down. And yes, you have a right to defend your airspace. Please do not take what I'm saying as saying that Turkey shouldn't defend their airspace or they don't have a right to do so. But they could have escorted that bomber out. It's a solo bomber. There was no fighter coverage. They could have escorted it out, particularly if the incursion was not great into their airspace, and then handled it along other channels. But they chose to take action, which is their right.
Right. Whether or not...
Was it the best action? I don't think it was the best.
Was it the most prudent approach at the time?
Right. I don't think so. Did it send a message to Russia? Well, of course it did.
Well, and I said...
Of course it did.
Russia could construe this one of two ways, right? We know Putin understands power. He rules by power. He could look at this as in, all right, let's stop screwing with Turkey because they're obviously not afraid. And there's that power versus power respect, right? Or is it going to be the Putin, hey, you know what? We're going to take a couple of yours now. And it's going to grow exponentially over time. And time will tell. You know, the Russians released a statement essentially saying, hey, this is what it is. We're very angry with Turkey. We're going to deal with Turkey as government to government, and it's not going to cause an escalation. But we know the Russians say a lot of things, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true. You know, like you said, Turks is a NATO country. And if Russia decides to get retribution and Turkey tries to invoke NATO, we could have a serious issue on our hands. Now, you could say that NATO doesn't necessarily have to honor it. I could even see NATO doing something crazy like kicking them out before, like destroying their ties to NATO because they don't want to get involved. But this is kind of the web we weave, right? And this is kind of the web NATO weaves. You know, to have a country be a part, and I'm not saying Turkey's a wild card or bad people. I'm not judging Turkey, but when you have a group like NATO, which is supposed to be the good guys in our opinion, and something like this happens, which is a lot different than a rocket from Hezbollah landing in Israel, you start to have problems. And at what point is Turkey looking for the fight? And at what point is Russia willing to respond? And you have to start weighing things back and forth. Now, the other part that comes to mind immediately is, okay, so Turkey tries to invoke, let's say Russia strikes at the airbase those planes came out of. Turkey tries to invoke, NATO says no. What's the point of having NATO? Because as much as I don't agree with how we got there, the simple fact is, well, number one, why is Turkey in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization? That's neither here nor there. the fact that we got there shouldn't count. What counts at that point is, does this mean NATO can now pick and choose who they're willing to defend, and they're almost turning into another UN, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have room for another UN. So, it's going to get hairy. And
what's Sacco have to do with this?
It's going to get Sacco'd.
It's going to get Sacco'd.
It's going to get Sacco'd all over the place. But I also think that now is the time, and I know it won't happen. I know it won't happen. Now's the time for Obama to step up and be a leader and be like, guys, let's calm down. Let's focus. Let's work on what the problem is. Turkey, you have an ISIS problem. Russia, you have an ISIS problem. Via Chechnya and Syria.
We have an ISIS problem.
We have an ISIS problem.
France has an ISIS problem.
Let's all get on the same team. We can work out the differences later.
Al-Qaeda has an ISIS problem.
Right. We can work out.
Did you see that, by the way?
Yes. Al-Qaeda definitely has an ISIS problem. Everybody has an ISIS problem. And, we start to go down that road of what a leader should be doing right now. Even with Russia, and again, we could talk about the bad of Russia, but in this case, they are more our friend than our enemy.
They really are. In this fight.
Right. Our goals are unique. It's World War II all over again, isn't it? We don't get along, but there's a bigger enemy at hand, and we need to get together.
And look what happens if we were to partner with Russia and France in this fight, and Turkey says you're no longer able to use our base, which is a big deal. You're no longer to use air bases within our borders, which is a big deal.
Huge deal.
We may be able to work something out with Russia to operate from their bases in Syria. Look, in World War II, we had bases in Russia.
Yeah. And, again, I always think of the movie Patton, right, where Patton's sitting down with the Russian general, and they both call each other a son of a bitch, and that's the one thing they'll agree on.
Right.
Right? But the goal was the same. They had to get rid of the Nazis. The Nazis were the biggest threat. And look at how many associations with the Nazis do we make about ISIS, right? Left and right.
Right.
I mean, all over the place. This is another one. We have to get there. We have to beat them, and then we can work out our differences. And you know what? There's a damn good chance that after ISIS is gone, if we unify and fight with Russia, there's a damn good chance we could go into this Cold War that we're about to slip into anyhow. And it'll be history literally repeating itself yet again. But then we can deal with Russia directly.
Right.
And we're not focused on other issues, i.e. ISIS.
Right. We could focus on Assad then.
Right. And we can
focus
work out
on the Middle East then.
Yep.
We can deal with Iran then.
But the problem is, and we've talked about this before, if it starts to pop off worse in the Middle East than it is right now, and I mean if Turkey and Russia start going at it, Article 5 is invoked. Now all of a sudden you have Iran, who's already in Syria, getting involved. You have China getting involved. You have a lot of players that start showing up. And
if Russia shoots down a Turkish aircraft?
Out. I mean, it's on. It's on like Donkey Kong. Yeah. It is on like friggin' Donkey Kong. And
because NATO's going to have to intervene.
Right. The only thing I see coming out of that is Obama withdrawing us from NATO because he's a giant wuss. But we quit, guys.
I didn't sign that.
I didn't. Yeah, that was signed by some Republican president. So, we are down this road, and it's very, very scary. Now, this is where NATO should also be stepping up. And instead of having a meeting, the heads of NATO should be heading to Turkey or finding a third country to meet with Russia and Turkey and having a conversation. And essentially saying to Russia, hey, yeah, you know what, it probably wasn't politically prudent for them to blow this plane out of the sky.
You probably shouldn't have flown into their airspace.
For the second time.
Right.
They probably could have gone about this, maybe fire a shot across his nose. I said across his nose, you idiot, not up it.
Right. Not up his ass, by his nose.
But you're playing with fire. And if this escalates...
I see what you did there. Plane, fire, went down.
Right. If this escalates any more Syrian than it already has,
Right.
we're going to have to get involved. And we don't want to do that.
And now we're going to be fighting ISIS and
Exactly.
Russia, or we're going to lose focus on ISIS, and the shift is going to move away from ISIS altogether, and it's going to be a conflict of NATO against Russia and its allies.
Right.
And ISIS is going to continue to grow, and that's a problem.
Right.
Obviously.
And there's going to be no way out at that point.
Because if NATO gets involved, there's no... I mean, I don't see Russia striking ISIS and...
No, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in so much trouble. I'll tell you right now, if there is another incident, knock on wood that there isn't. If there's another
That was your
incident,
head.
Hey, well, somebody had to do it. I really think that you will start to see Iranian aircraft all of a sudden patrolling over Russia. I think you'll start seeing Iranians using maybe some Chinese equipment over Russia. Syria, rather.
Would Russia say, well, we need to establish air superiority over Turkey?
Yeah. We would,
or over part of Turkey?
Yeah. And then we would have to come to Turkey's defense, or somebody will, and start flying. And it's literally, you're rubbing two sticks together. Mm-hmm. And it's only a matter of time. And I'll tell you, I don't know which way Putin will go with this. I really don't. And I've been following him a long time. I know he's an old KGB operative. I know he lives by power. I know who Putin is. But he's also savvy.
Mm-hmm.
He's very, very savvy. And he's also looking to make friends with some countries in that region.
And he's also not going to be pushed around.
Right. But if he sets up the air defense and kind of draws the line in the sand, which he will actually not allow to cross, unlike Obama, if he draws his red line and it's never crossed, he could turn around to the other side and be like, hey, look at even with Turkey. Yeah, they blew a thing out of our sky, and if they'd done it again, we would have knocked them down. However, I knew the biggest problem at hand was ISIS. And now in your country, I want to come in and help fix the ISIS problem. I told you with Egypt and the plane downing in Sinai, he is trying to spread, he's trying to just ooze everywhere he can. And he will do that.
He's filling the void that we left.
Right. And, you know...
Good job.
So that is something that I fear, and he may not do things overtly. Now, do I think that the next couple of weeks there's going to be a couple of suicide bombers inside Turkey? I absolutely do. And they may fall out of an airplane. They may parachute to the earth. They may not be alive before they hit there, but the timer will be just right. But I don't think you will see a uniform... I mean, look at Crimea, right? Prime example. Crimea is a great example of how he knows how to sidestep things. He will not send an actual occupying force in because that would be illegal, and that would create a bigger problem.
I think the bigger threat would be a Turkish aircraft being shot down.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, but I'm using that as the example. He was able to get it done without actually having the Russian military go in and do it, even though we all know, and to this day it drives me crazy, but we all know that it was the Russian military. Yep. Everybody knew it, and they've proven it time and again with geolocating on pictures of these guys. It's the airliner that was shot down, ML-24, Malaysian airliner, you know, we know that came from Russian equipment. We know the Russians were operating that. We know. But he knows essentially where the legal test is, and he's a KGB operative.
He's sneaky.
People are going to die, and nobody's going to quote-unquote know who did it, or at least be able
to prove
it. I look back to his political opponent, who was gunned down, and then the three guys who were arrested, who were probably just patsies at the end of the day, you know what I mean? But he made it work. Why? Because it was a threat to his power. So I don't think Russia will go in there and dropping bombs and blow a Turkish plane out of the sky, but I definitely think you'll see the amount of suicide attacks increase in Turkey shortly.
He might. He might shoot down an aircraft. Hey, you're getting too close to ours. We're flying up here. We were protecting you. You shot down one. We didn't know if you were going to shoot down another. And we may have been just on this side of the border, and you were right.
Yes.
Turkish aircraft locks up. I mean, it's sketchy. And again, I'm not a huge fan of Putin, and I know you're not either. But in this fight, this is one we look. Putin's kind of taken the lead, at least publicly, on the ISIS fight right now, particularly in Syria. He
may be putting the smackdown on Turkey real soon. You never know.
You never know.
I've been waiting years to use that one.
I know. That was just horrible.
And you know what I want to know, honestly? I brought up the UN earlier, but where the hell is the UN in all of this?
They want to stay the hell out.
Exactly. The last thing they want is a whole bunch of blue helmets running around like idiots. Wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is amazing to me. I just think it's funny what they're willing to at the UN start throwing their quote-unquote weight around with and opening their big, fat, stupid mouths.
Yeah.
And then shit where they actually need to be involved, if you will, according to who they are and how important they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
And where you expect blue helmets to start showing up, it's nowhere.
Yeah, why aren't blue helmets fighting ISIS?
Yeah, why aren't blue helmets even if they're just defending the people of Raqqa? Because they're petrified, and they know that ISIS will kick their ass,
yeah.
So they're not going to do it. It's not like they can fight like the Kurds can. You want to send a military... again, that's our other rub with Turkey, too, in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
The Turks consider the Kurds a terrorist organization. All of them. Not just some of them, and there are some extremists that are Kurds, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But even the groups that are fighting ISIS that aren't at all extremists, and they're doing it because they have to do it to live, the Turks hate them too, and we support them. So you just look at the Middle East and what a friggin' disaster it is. It just makes my head spin.
We're up against the break.
Yep, it is that time, my friend. When we come back...
More from the Sackers Radio Show.
Get a shot!
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, 100 Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cough for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Hey, it's Jersey Joe from Reefer of Common Sense, and we have moved to a new night and time. Every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on shrmedia.com, you will catch the Reefer of Common Sense uncensored, unfiltered, and only on shrmedia.com.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sack Kids Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us here in the last 30 minutes of the show, the funnest 30 minutes usually. Why? Because it's when the alcohol is really starting to take effect. Now, pardon me. So, we got into the whole Russia, Middle East bombing things to just Turkish airspace debacle. You, as we were discussing it, you pulled up the track of the Russian plane. And how far into Turkish airspace would you say it went?
I don't know. There's no scale on the track that I'd pulled up, but the track that they showed, it did go into Turkish airspace.
Okay, so at least we have that much.
Yeah.
Which may sound silly, but you know what?
There was no ruler in the bottom to where you could tell. It went about an inch and a half.
It was one of those things that I'm like, through all the research I did, I never actually checked the track to see if it wasn't even close to Turkish airspace, and this whole conversation's for naught. But I digress. So what do you want to talk about?
What are you talking about?
I just want to know which topic you want to pick for the last 30 minutes. 25 now.
Which one? We touched on it. There was an Al-Qaeda suicide bomber that took out an ISIS leader.
Yes.
So even Al-Qaeda's pissed at him.
Right. You had the Al-Qaeda Mali attack earlier this week. You know, and it's funny. I think and just so everyone, if you don't know, ISIS split from Al-Qaeda very early on. They were all kind of under the same umbrella, and then ISIS said, yeah, you guys are kind of the JV squad now, and stepped away. The attack in Mali on a five-star hotel, I think you're going to start seeing Al-Qaeda rather, become more active. And here's why. They're losing influence over people that they once had influence over. You saw Boko Haram kind of side with ISIS and stay away from Al-Qaeda. Early on, they were affiliated with Al-Qaeda. It'll be interesting to see what, one of the other countries that plays into all this that nobody's even talking about right now is Somalia and Mogadishu, which is full of warlords and Muslim extremists as well, that ISIS, I think at some point, will begin to infiltrate and start working as well. Al-Qaeda is kind of going to start being the loud kid in the corner saying, hey, look at us. We're still here and we still want to kill people. And that's something, when we start talking about attacks in this country, that's something that concerns me as well. Because you now not only have ISIS threatening attacks, and in my opinion has the ability to do so, but you also have Al-Qaeda who's looking for that recognition again and trying to stay present and
relevant,
current,
yeah.
And relevant. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but it is kind of a Kim Kardashian, hey, look, I need the camera on me type thing. These people exist because they scare people, and they only gather their support when they're doing things that are noted by media and in public, hence the Mali attack. So I think that's something, too, that we're starting to really kind of lose sight of. Like Al-Qaeda is so last week, if you will, and everyone's giving ISIS attention, that I think you're going to start seeing Al-Qaeda start being more bold about what they do.
Well, then we need to go hit them, too.
Well, I agree. We should. Listen, when it came to Al-Qaeda, we should have finished the job, but this president chose not to.
Yeah. Have you seen the report that there's an Inspector General probe, and there's emails, I guess, that were uncovered that show that Department of Defense analysts were told to tone down their warnings and to, quote, cut it out. They wanted their intelligence reports altered to show a better picture than what was actually happening on the ground.
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that came out this week. They needed to, quote, cut it out and to, quote, toe the line.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The analysts were not happy about that, obviously. But these emails are now in the possession of the Pentagon Inspector General, and they're expanding it as to whether intelligence assessments were changed in order to give a more positive picture in this anti-ISIS campaign.
It's amazing, it's so bizarre because, you had the former director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, come out, and I got this from Pundit Press, and we talk about just different reasons for attacks and not attacks by this administration, air attacks, if you will. Mm-hmm. And this kind of dovetails into that, I think. And Morrell said that Obama didn't hit ISIS because of his concern for their oil, rather, because of his concern for the environment. So the oil from ISIS that is funding a lot of their attacks and campaigns, because global warming, in his eyes, is a bigger threat, or at least that's what he says in public. I don't necessarily agree with that being the reasoning, but he's not going to hit their finances, which, listen, any military operation, if you can take out the funding and or equipment, you choke, you get your boot on the neck of your opponent. It's kind of military tactics 101, right? You take out supply lines, you take out finances, then they don't have the equipment to fight with. So you have Morrell coming out saying that the president's concern for the environment is so deep that he couldn't even attack ISIS's money. And then there's another report on Pundit Press as well by Dan Butcher that before a recent attack on his ISIS oil transport made up of 116 trucks, the Obama administration dropped leaflets to warn the group 45 minutes before the attack. The leaflets said, and I quote, "Get out of your trucks now and run away from them. Warning, airstrikes are coming, oil trucks to be destroyed. Get away from your trucks immediately. Do not risk your life." And then in the ISIS area of Abu Kamal.
Did you say Abu Camel?
Abu Camel. We destroyed 116 tanker trucks that were owned by ISIS. So you have two very kind of disturbing trends, or more, I should say, disturbing trends with this president about just...
Well, this president said that he didn't know the intelligence was altered, and that he certainly wasn't getting a rosy picture of things. Somebody knew it was being altered.
Well, and we had a report earlier this week, and I forget, I might have saw it on Alan West's website, that there are reports that he is again ignoring the intelligence reports every single morning that he's been given on the ISIS attacks, or on the ISIS operations in general, which is something we talked about a year ago with Al-Qaeda, and we talked about with Afghanistan and Iraq, that he was not using the intel that he had at his disposal and choosing to ignore it. And we're seeing that start to pop up again. I hate to say where there's smoke, there's fire, but if you look at him coming out and talking about there's no threat to America.
And it fits with the whole narrative of, it was a video.
Right. It keeps going back to that. And it really brings up the question is, what is his motivation? Is his motivation, is he...
He can't... Look... The power vacuum he created has contributed largely to the situation we face now. And he knows that. So he has to try and spin it any way he can so that he doesn't look and that his party doesn't look like a complete failure on foreign policy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but he's...
right?
I hate to say it, that ship sailed, though. No matter what this president does in the last year that he has in office, or a year and 3 months... nothing's going to save his foreign policy disasters. The only thing would be...
a Republican president, a Republican Congress, to actually go in and kick some ass.
Right, but even if he... the only thing that would save him is if he became so hawkish on ISIS right now that he left the remnants as he was walking out the door. That would be the only thing that would save his foreign policy legacy.
And you know what else would? And you know what else that would save? If he became hawkish and the Democrats became hawkish on ISIS,
save an election.
That would save an election for him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that could really make a difference because you know what?
Absolutely.
Everybody, contrary to what this president...
What is it, over 60-something%? The latest Fox News poll, over 60-something%, I think. I could be wrong on that, but I think people disagree with the way he's handling this.
Right, and you talk about...
And that's going to be a huge point in the election.
Over 70% of the people think that ISIS is the biggest threat to our country right now.
And it is.
That was a Gallup poll.
And it is the biggest threat.
Fox. You're right. They are absolutely the biggest threat.
So this would save the Democrats in the election, particularly if the Democratic nominee said, we're going to continue what President Obama started.
Right.
Yes, we realize that he was wrong, and yes, we need to do this.
Absolutely. And you have,
that would take an entire argument away, a huge argument away from the Republican candidates.
It would absolutely, and right now they're not doing that.
The Republican candidates would have to say, yeah, we agree. It'd be like Mitt Romney when he said, well, I agree, during the debates.
Yeah. And listen, when you go back to this incident right now that's going on, you have to kind of look back to the debates in 2008 with Romney, 2012 rather, with Romney.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that Romney hit on that were 100% accurate. 100% accurate. He brought up Russia.
The 80s called. They want their foreign policy back.
Yeah. And all they had was vitriol and one-liners to respond, and nobody pressed the fact that this was coming. And listen, we've talked about this for, 3 years now?
Mm-hmm.
4 years now with Russia specifically, and the rise of the Muslim extremism. It's crazy. And you can't tell me, listen, we're two idiots with an online show. It's not like there's not intelligence out there that we get that people in the White House don't.
We're one idiot and a guy from Boston.
But everybody knows it's ongoing. And Kel and Dave in the chat room are talking about this right now. We have videos of the Yazidis being auctioned off to slave markets by ISIS. We're not doing anything about that. Like, you have all these incidents going on right now. We know that's there. We know it's a topic. We know it's a problem, and we need to do it. And he's not doing anything about it. But I agree. If we turned around and we said, hey, or if he turned around and he said, hey, you know what? Yeah, he could even phrase it however he wants to say it, but he could say, global warming is a big deal, but ISIS is the bigger deal right now, or ISIS is just as dangerous, or if ISIS gets control of those oil fields, and they can start doing damage to save the environment so ISIS isn't blowing up these oil fields, et cetera, et cetera. He could phrase it however he wants. But the simple fact is if he starts putting artillery where his goddamn mouth is, he could save quite a bit on the other side for Democrats. But the problem is, and I say it all the time, the biggest problem is I think this guy is running for Secretary General of the UN. Right? UN's silent on this, and so is Obama. It's kind of funny how that goes hand in hand. And I know I bring up the UN a lot, but I really think that this is this guy's goal. I mean, let's face it, he's not going to leave office in 2016 and just disappear. You're going to see him. You think Carter is a pain in the ass right now, and he is. Carter's a humongous pain in the ass.
Yeah, he is.
Obama's going to be 15 times worse. Clinton pretty much went away and just did fundraising until Hillary started showing up again. Really, I mean, he didn't do much else. This guy's going to be there, and I think it's because of the UN. He absolutely just has so much into this global government, United Nations approach, and he wants to be there. He wants to be that.
That's why we need a Republican president. Tell him to go pound sand.
Yeah, and to start day one, 2 orders. If I was president, if I got elected president, day one, 2 orders I would sign: the eviction of the United Nations from our soil.
Yes.
And with the same pen stroke, all-out attack on any ISIS target of any opportunity at any given moment.
So you would have 2 pieces of paper literally right next to each other, the signature block on the far right side of one, far left side of the other, so you can just continue the signature onto both pages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, I would get rid of the UN first, because I really...
I'd ask for a declaration of war against ISIS from Congress.
Oh, yeah. But anything that I could continue with executive order in the way that he's going right now until I got that officially. I would, you know what? No, we're not going to be.
I'd have an FDR moment. I'd go in front of Congress and ask for a declaration of war.
The minute after I got sworn in, I'd walk right to the floor of Congress immediately. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. I just
flew in. Boy, my arms tired. Hey. Joe Biden, you didn't win the election.
You remember? Joe, you didn't even run. Yeah, so now that I'm president, some things are really going to change around here.
First of all, I want hookers. Next.
Who is this guy? He was the vice president.
It's Joe Biden.
Doesn't he know this is an Arby's? I call Congress here today to order a roast beef and seriously. You get sworn in, so help me God. Thank everybody. Walk into the floor of Congress, do 2 shots of whiskey off the desk, say, I call you here right now.
Jello shot off the secretary?
Jello shot off the secretary? Come here, Toots.
I thought Biden was out. Yeah, this isn't Biden. Some guy, Sackhead Clint, I don't even know how he got elected.
The funniest part is all of his campaign posters said 2015. Right. He didn't have the right year. We thought Trump was an issue. And you ask for that declaration of war, and as soon as you get it, you turn all resources loose. All resources loose. And if that includes calling up reserves immediately to start dealing with that, you do it.
And look, I like Fiorina's idea of reestablishing the 6th Fleet.
Oh, you have to. You know what, though? You're going to see every candidate. I know she talked about that. And I want to say Cruz talked about it a little bit ahead of times, too. Before Carly actually did. I think Cruz said that in an interview somewhere that our 6th Fleet was so needed to come back.
I don't know, but she was the one who said specifically.
But, right, she brought it up much more public. But you absolutely have to reestablish the 6th Fleet, and you have to get it underway right away and start making some changes. And then it's twofold, right? Because the damage you do militarily will affect it, but the fact that they know somebody who is not afraid to take them on is starting to come. They're going to start losing members quick, right? Because everyone says it all the time about this country, and you hear it left and right, is you don't want to poke the bear and wake it up. And it's not the American people, it's not the American people who are laying silently, it's our president. But if they commit an act that is so heinous, which is why I don't think you'll ever see a humongous attack, because they're afraid to wake us. And they know that if even this president, if there's a major attack, it's going to be after 9/11. Every person in this country, even the Democrats and the liberals, will be demanding heads from ISIS be put on stakes on our shores, just as a warning to the others. We saw it after 9/11. I don't care how many uber-liberal friggin' Birkenstock, granola-eating sons of bitches are out there saying, I was against the war of Iraq because we... Bullshit. Yep. That was total bullshit. This entire country, ad nauseum, was demanding that something be done. You had people all over the place demand something be done. And something was done. You remember Congress singing out in front of Congress? You had just, what was the Iraq War Declaration? It was, like, I want to say out of the House, it was 90%, something like that voted for it. It was unbelievable. And if they had another major attack, I think that's the only thing that keeps a huge, large-scale attack from happening in this country, because ISIS knows that if there's an attack that big and the will of the American people changes, who we're tired from war, we're tired of seeing our soldiers come back injured and worse, they know that. And so they're preying on that right now. They're hurting us. Travel is down this week. They're hurting us economically. They know if they scare people, they'll stay home. If they launch that one major attack and they wake up the conscience of this country to realize now that and unfortunately, this is how we respond in this country, right? Yeah. It's not a big deal until we're the victims. Even France, the attack on France, which
it was horrible, but you know,
right. France was our original ally, and I had to remind people a lot. The French, one of the reasons we won the Revolutionary War, They literally were resigning their commission of the French military. They were resigning their citizenship because the king at the time didn't want to have a direct war with France. So with England, so they had to resign completely and their citizenship to come over and support the Americans.
Marquis de Lafayette was a volunteer.
Absolutely. You had, and they loved this country so much that when Washington died, Napoleon called for a 10-day mourning period.
Yeah.
In France. So our relations with France, I understand the Parisians are Parisians. And I get that, but our relationship with France, we're kind of closer to them than we are with England, and we should be, right? That blood goes deep. The fact that the nation didn't respond angrily, as angry as I thought it should have, really bothered me. Yeah, we got the Statue of Liberty from the French as a reminder.
Yeah, what did the British give us?
Kel.
Nothing. They burned the frickin' White House. Thank you.
They gave us a bonfire.
Right. Look, I want to get back to the Sixth Fleet real quick. Our Navy is smaller now, I believe, than it was since before World War I.
Shorter?
No, not shore. It's a Navy. I believe we're downsized to the point where we're pre-World War I levels. And we need at least another carrier in the Gulf. But we need that fleet over there.
Yeah.
To assist in this fight with ISIS as well.
Somebody when you asked what did the British give us, and the answer is, what about the Beatles?
No.
They didn't give us the Beatles.
Yeah.
See, because slavery was over at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And they could have them back.
Monty Python?
No.
I don't know. Monty
Peter Pan?
I prefer Monty Python over Peter Pan. At least Monty Python was funny as hell.
True.
So, yeah.
I think a T-bone is about to enter the studio.
I think we're about to get T-boned.
I think there's a T-Rex that's about to make its way.
Now I got to watch my right side because he knows about the secret Batcave entrance. So I got to watch my right side now.
Yeah, he is he's an honorary.
He's an honorary sackhead. Betty Hill?
No.
They didn't give us Benny Hill?
No.
They could have given us Benny Hill.
But they didn't.
That would have been awesome, actually. Sorry, the Sixth Fleet. I got confused. You mentioned the Sixth Fleet.
I don't even know where I was going now with that.
Sixth Fleet being smaller.
T-Bone!
T-Bone's in the house.
You want to say hi to the people, T-Bone?
Nope.
He said no.
Nope, he's out.
He's out. He just dropped the mic. It was the weirdest thing. He didn't even say anything, and he dropped the mic and turned around and walked out. Like he literally grabbed a mic off of your old desk.
Oh, shit.
This was a hell of a show. We had one topic on the big board of topics.
And we didn't even get to it.
Yeah.
But we'll talk baseball next week. I mean, it's really that time of year to get into it again. A couple things just from our end. We'll be back next Wednesday at 11 p.m. on the East Coast.
I will literally be parachuting into the seat. Yeah,
I mean, if you hear a car crash through the wall, a la Peter Griffin and Family Guy, that will be Clint arriving to the studio next week.
Yeah. I might have to be airdropped in.
Might have to be. That would be awesome. I'd actually love it if you came through the window.
I haven't done that in a while.
No, you haven't.
Not since the silo.
Make sure you check out all the other great shows here on the SHR Media Network. The Unpleasant Blind Guy, The Exceptional Conservative, News and Commentary with Dan Butcher, RFB Radio. She's on our Spreaker as well as some of our live streams. You get it right here on SHR Media. Make sure you check out our good friends over at Pundit Press. Dan Butcher does an amazing job over there, and always a good read. And enjoy your Thanksgiving.
I do have something, I want to share, and we do this every year, but I want to share a tradition that I have on Thanksgiving, and that is reading George Washington's Thanksgiving address. Kind of at the table. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to pull it up, take a look at it. If you are familiar with it, I encourage you to pull it up, take a look at it. It's something that I share with my family Thanksgiving time, and it's something that I believe you started as well.
Yes, we did. We'll try to get to that tomorrow as well. Not going to be a standard Thanksgiving for my house, so gotta find time to do it. But and to our good friends in Canada, I just want to say, have a nice Thursday.
Right.
Enjoy your Thursday.
Enjoy your Thursday, eh?
Well, we'll be having
Enjoy
parades.
your Thursday, eh?
Well, we're having parades in Turkey. You guys have to work tomorrow, so
have fun with that.
It's one more reason why it's awesome to be an American.
Right.
For Sackhead Clint, this is Sackhead Sean wrapping up the show. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. Sackhead Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Sackhead Radio. The best late night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.